Welcome to the next Year 9 video. The truth is out there. The truth is out there was the tagline for a program called The X-Files back in the 90s. Two detectives were trying to work out whether there was really alien life and whether it had visited our planet. They believed that somehow, one of them through science, the other one through speculation, could find the real truth. Here's a short video for your homework, which perhaps you might want to watch a couple of times, taking our discussion in class about truth just a little bit further. At the end you'll have learned something new, and there'll be a short test on that in class next time. First, a summary. You remember this quote: how do I know that something is true, or how do I know that something is false? How do I know that something is reliable, that something is unreliable? By a man I introduced as Dr. Ard Louis, and we'll see him on video next time. We decided it's quite difficult to work out whether something is true or false, and very important that we know things are reliable. We also talked about this phrase: truth means scientific truth, said first by Professor Richard Dawkins, and we decided, perhaps you might disagree, that this is quite a difficult phrase to actually believe in, and that there might be a whole load more truths than just scientific truth. In fact, we talked about other things too: religious truths, mathematical truths, moral truths, personal truths, historical, linguistic, musical, and scientific. Lots of different ways that we can approach the subject of truth. Three important ones for us are these: empirical or scientific, moral, and spiritual or religious. It's the first and the third of those that will really clash to give us our topic this term. Let's just discuss each one of them briefly in turn. A scientific truth is something generally that you can measure. Empirical means something you can measure. For example, water boils at 100 degrees centigrade in 1 atmosphere. That's something you can measure, you can check, you can test. Can you think of any other examples? Well, we talked about a few in class. We also talked about the evidence that you'd look for. Evidence from experiments you could do yourself, evidence from other scientists, evidence from books. Pretty good sort of evidence, really. We also talked about moral truths. Talked about the fact that one example would be it's wrong to murder. It's different to the fact that it's a law. It's also against the law, but most people would accept that it's morally wrong to murder. So that's a moral truth. Can you think of other examples of laws in Britain that are based on moral laws? Well, we came up in class with ones like do not steal. There might be some moral truths that are not against the law. It's worth asking the question, what would a society without morals be like? Would it be any different to a society without laws? Are moral truths important? And finally, spiritual or religious truths. Spiritual or religious truths are things that are true as part of a religious belief. Very often it's just the members of that religion that actually believe that truth. An example would be the Ten Commandments. They're religious truths, although we also use them as moral truths. God exists is a religious truth, and only some people believe that. Some people might believe the opposite truth, that God does not exist. There are a couple of other important words that we need to consider when we're thinking about truth. Can we ever say that something is always going to be true? If we can, we call that an absolute truth, something that is true for all times, for all people, in all places. For example, gravity exerts a force on things. There's nowhere in the universe that you can go where gravity is not a force. It might act in slightly different ways, but gravity exerting a force is an absolute truth. Some things might be true for only some of the time, not true for all times, all places, and all people. These things we call changing, evolving, or relative truths. They're relative to the situation you're in. For example, Romeo loves Juliet. That's a changing truth. There might come a day when Romeo doesn't love Juliet, or it evolves and Romeo loves Juliet more, having not loved her before. It's relative to the situation that Romeo and Juliet find themselves in. These are two quite important phrases, absolute truth and changing truth, because religion and science both lay claims to absolute truth. That's what Richard Dawkins was doing with his quote, "Truth means scientific truth." That's what Christians and Muslims and Jews believe when they say God exists. They are saying it is an absolute truth. Some people treat truths, both scientific truths and religious truths, as changing or evolving. So these are two words to watch out for and ideas to be thinking about as we consider this topic of science and religion. Finally, a little test, and we'll go on over this in class. Here are some phrases. The sun rises in the east. The sun rises every day. The sun sets every day. Days are getting longer. Well, they are now that December the 21st is gone. The weather is getting warmer. We are getting older. People who wear glasses are more intelligent. I was born and I will die. Take a moment now, pause the video and consider which of those are actually absolute truths and which ones are relative, changing or evolving truths. We'll go over these and perhaps introduce a few more in class later this week. Thank you for watching.